Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to Detroit Black and White. Yeah, I have us on in the background. Welcome to our Saturday morning's edition. We have on deck Mr. Allan Lengel. We call him Eastside Al. What's up, East
Hey,
Side Al?
good morning, everyone.
And we also have Mr. Jim Nardone, the former chief of police for the Trenton Police Department. This is our downriver brother. What's up, Jim?
Good morning. Good Saturday morning to you. I like nighttime better. I don't know about everybody else, but I don't know about this morning stuff, especially this time of year. There's Dwayla. Good morning to Dwayla. Happy New Year. I struggle a little bit. I'd rather be,
Yeah. And then, of course, you have myself, Vanessa Moss. I don't know if Adolph is going to be joining us this morning. We suspect that he will be popping in this morning. So, something I haven't done in a long time is an outrage. So we're going to go around about our outrages. But before we do that, this is what I'm going to do: is I'm going to acknowledge everyone that is watching Detroit in Black and White on these YouTube streets or any of the other social media platforms. You can catch Detroit in Black and White on all social media platforms. You can also join us in the comments section like Dwayla Boyce, Kenneth Reed, and Janet Overall. And thanks for the look, Janet. You know what I'm talking about. You can also join us by clicking on the link. We're going to have a link in the corner, and that link will allow you to come in and make your comment. Now, there have been people who've asked us, well, how do you do it? All you do is you take your phone, just like restaurants, you put your camera on that link, and it will allow you to come in. Come on in, join us. Join us in Black and White. If you don't want to show your face, just say audio only. You don't have to use the camera to show your face. So we're going to get to it. We're going to go with you, Allan. What is your outrage?
My outrage is, I don't know if you're following, but the what's going on in Venezuela. They've arrested Nicolas Maduro, who's the leader, who I guess had actually been voted out of office but continued to remain in office. And they've taken him and his wife, and they're taking them to the U.S. now to, I guess, prosecute them on narco-terrorism charges. But I just think, for a person who's been bragging about being a peacetime president and stuff like that, I mean, bottom line is Venezuela was not a threat to us. Mm-hmm. And a lot of those drugs that they were blowing up those ships, apparently there wasn't enough fuel there to even get to the U.S. Maybe it was being transported elsewhere. And we've had, with the invitation of other governments like Colombia in the past, where the DEA has done missions and gone into other countries to bomb their labs where they're producing cocaine and stuff. But I feel like we're way overstepping our bounds here. So.
Well, we know what the motivation is, and so
oil, money.
Oil and money. And to me, it's always that. And I don't see an end to this anytime soon. I really don't. What do you think, Jim?
Well, I'm unfamiliar with what happened last night. I think it's not a good look to go into. So the United States went in there and arrested Maduro.
Yeah, and his wife. They put him on a ship.
I'm unfamiliar with that, but I sure like to take a look at that, and it kind of leads into where I was going this morning. I want to be a little more broader than I hate Donald Trump, but I get it. I want to talk about the United States Constitution, and I think that it's a brand new year, and we all need to start paying attention to the Constitution. And it's we, the people, need to hold people accountable, right? In 1789, when the Bill of Rights, after the Constitution, the Bill of Rights and the Constitution applied to white male landowners. It didn't apply to women. It didn't apply to anybody else, right? And we've come a long way since the 1700s, but some of the things in the Constitution, whether it's the current administration, I'll say administration instead of saying the president, things like due process, and along to Venezuela, military strikes on civilians. These are things that kind of step up without approval of Congress. And it's been done before. I'm not saying it hasn't, but there is a process, and we need to follow the Constitution. And going further on that, I mean, who's the dictator now? Mondami is now, talking about collectivism in New York. He's the mayor of New York. He's not the president. He'd like to be the president. To me, I thought it was interesting that the two of them met at the White House, and they both had more in common than they didn't than not. And that's because they're both out for a power grab, right? They're both the same. We had this, who's your dictator? We should have this quiz. Who's your dictator, right? Is it Mondani? Is it Trump? Is it snitch lines during COVID when you called your neighbor because there was more than 6 people there? Is it who's shooting rubber bullets? Who told you you'd be arrested if you left the patio department at Home Depot? I'm talking about both sides here, right? Who tells you to stay home and then gets on a private jet? I mean, who's your dictator? We might need to have that.
Who's your daddy?
Yeah, who's your dictator today?
Who's your dictator?
And the reason I bring that up is we all assume that a current administration or the governor, whoever is going to, is just going to adhere to the Constitution. And that's what they should be doing. And they're all stepping outside the boundaries of the Constitution to get what they want. And it's time that we, the people, hold them accountable, whether it's due process, birthright citizenship, whether it's, the freedom to walk down the street without somebody telling you what to do. It's up to us.
Well, you know what, Jim? I do agree with you. It's up to us. And it's up to us to take these kind of issues. I mean, we have the Constitution. We also have the court system. And you have, a president. He's not the only president, but you have a president that is pushing the envelope in terms of what is in the Constitution and how far can I go. And so until you have people that says, you know what, you're going a bit too far, we demand something different, we're going to continue to see the same thing, not just in the current president's administration. You see it all over. You use the mayor of the city of New York as an example. You could use the outgoing mayor of the city of Detroit as an example. You could use the mayor in Inkster as an example. I mean, my point is, when people have that kind of power, they want to see how far they can go with that power. And people love to be next to power, right? And people love to, if it serves their interest, they're all for it. So, I don't disagree. Go ahead, Allan.
Well, I think with Trump, it's not only a constitutional issue over declaring war and all that, but there's international laws that tries to create civility around the world, and those are being trampled on. As far as Mondami or Duggan or whatever, I mean, do they overstep? I don't know constitutionally if they're overstepping, but certainly, some people perceive them as overstepping their intentions or the intentions of the voters for them,
Well, you even have people here. I mean, we'll go beyond. I'm just saying, you have the governor who's been tested and said, "Hey, you're going beyond the Michigan Constitution as well as the U.S. Constitution." You've had her challenge. You've had the current Attorney General challenge. I just think that people with power believes, "Hey, I have this power. I can do this," and they push the limits. They go to the boundaries and maybe beyond. And until people say, "Oh, hecky no, we're not putting up with this," they will continue to do that because they haven't been challenged. And hey, if you don't call me on it, then I'm going to continue to do it. That's my feeling. I could be totally wrong. I don't think so, but that's what we see. So I have two outrages, if you will. The first one is, I saw a story, and if I had done the show last night, I would have talked about it last night. It was a story about a doctor who is currently, hold on one second. who is currently serving 59 years in prison for Medicaid fraud. But this guy, this doctor, there's now a civil lawsuit because he has decided um, he was performing unnecessary C-sections and hysterectomies on over 500 women. And he did it, some without consent. And so the bottom line is he was making that hospital a whole heck of a lot of money.
Where was this at?
This is in, okay, I'm going to tell you, Chesapeake. It is
Maryland?
Virginia Hospital.
Virginia.
Yep. And I'm going to tell you the name of the, yeah, he performed unnecessary C-section hysterectomies and other surgeries on over 500 women to boost revenue. And so these women have sued in civil courts. He's already serving time criminally for Medicaid fraud. So here's the rub. You have this, and they said it was an open secret. Everybody knew that he was doing it. And people were rewarded. The anesthesiologists, the nurses, etc. They were all rewarded with these lavish gifts by this guy. So this Chesapeake, I want to give the correct name. It is the doctor's name is Perez, and they called it the Chesapeake Regional Medical Center, and his name is Perez. And so I'm outraged because you have women that are very vulnerable. They're pregnant, hysterectomies. You go to the doctor, you go to these hospitals, and you trust these people as professionals, and they look at it as a money grab. And of course, I'm outraged because as a woman, you see these things happen. You hear women talk about these things. So to have a professional do this and have other people that know about it and don't say anything about it, I think it is outrageous. So you have women who've had hysterectomies and didn't have to have a hysterectomy. You have women who've had C-sections and these horrible scars and when they didn't have to have it. That is terrible. I'm pissed that these people were, as far as I'm concerned, you was just as as the doctor who performed these surgeries. So what's going to happen, what I predict is going to happen, this lawsuit, they're going to be successful because it's a civil lawsuit. The civil lawsuit, the burden of proof is not high like criminals, beyond a reasonable doubt, right? And so they'll get some money. I think they'll get some money. I believe that they'll get some monetary relief. But the fact that you have women who had hysterectomies that now can't have babies and things like that, that's pretty awful, cruel, criminal, and it just pisses me off.
And you're right. And I'm going to let Allan go. But Vanessa, would you please just explain to the people the difference between a criminal and civil and what the bar is for a civil action?
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, Allan.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Allan.
I was going to say we had this in 2015 where Dr. Farid, who is an oncologist who had a bunch of clinics all around, got 45 years in prison, which should have gotten really more. He should have just gotten flat out life. He was giving treatments for cancer, chemo and stuff. For some people who didn't even have cancer, he was giving chemo when it was already, there's a point of no return when you have cancer where the chemo no longer works. It's not helping anymore. You're in your final phases, maybe in the last month or two, or even last few weeks. And some of the families may say, hey, do whatever you can, just keep giving the person. But you're a doctor. He was giving, like I say, to people who didn't even have cancer. He got people sick. He's in prison. His family, I think, went back to Lebanon, where they had a huge palace there. He lived in Oakland Township in a big home there. And it makes me sick when I see these doctors doing the money grab. Medicare fraud is so pervasive. There are so many doctors who check the boxes of certain things, of things they don't do. They get Medicare to pay for certain treatments and stuff that they're not even performing. They get a sheet, you submit it to Medicare. And so the Medicare fraud is so high. I've always thought they need to hire more, for whatever, $80,000, $90,000, hire a Medicare investigator who can probably catch $10-15 million in fraud. And, it just pays off to do that. But we see there's a lot of medical fraud.
The fraud is one thing. The fact that you are cutting on people, any kind of surgery, there's a risk of loss of life. It's a risky procedure. How effed up is that? And to have all these people, to give him a name like I forgot what they called it, the Perez treatment. They said it was an open secret. Everybody knew what this guy was doing. So yeah, he's locked away. But what about these over 500 women that has experienced this situation? And this is why a lot of people, I would say, in particularly women and women who look like me, don't trust doctors, because we don't know. Listen, I was a few years ago, and you guys know this, a few years ago, I had an emergency surgery. I was scared as shit, okay? I didn't want them to perform the surgery because I didn't trust that this was, legitimate.
Necessary.
Exactly. There was another procedure that they wanted to conduct on me. And I told them, no, I'm living with this condition. I'm doing fine. I'm like, look, it's been like this since, gosh, I don't know how long. I've known about this condition. No, you're not cutting on me. You're not doing that. The fact that you do that, and you have these people, they under the influence of medication, they really can't make an informed decision. It really, really pissed me off. So, Jim, I'm going to answer your question. When you talk about a criminal matter, you're talking about the prosecutor. The burden is on the prosecutor. The prosecutor has to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. Every element of the crime they have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. It's not on the defendants. Whereas when you're talking about civil case, the burden of proof is on the plaintiff, the people that are suing. And it's by preponderance of the evidence.
51%. Right?
Likely than not that it happened. Okay. Like a 50% or a little over 50%.
51, yeah. I think that's important for people to understand.
So I'm going to use an example. One of the examples is and some of our viewers may not even remember, but when you had the O.J. Simpson trial, right? O.J. Simpson was found not guilty in the criminal case. However, in the civil lawsuit, he was found guilty. He was supposed to pay the Goldmans, the whatever.
Right. That responsible. Family, he was found guilty.
Responsible. And what he did was he used the law to not pay them. He moved to Florida where he could protect his assets and would have to give them a dime. So he used, and people are pissed, but he used the law to his advantage. Okay. But the bottom line is that was something that I really, really, it really bothered me because I'm a woman. I know women that have had hysterectomies, and it makes me question whether or not those hysterectomies were really, really necessary. And this guy got caught. How many others have done the same thing? And they wonder why people are suspicious of doctors. I told somebody the other day, I said, you know what? No disrespect, because we all have to see them, but they're explorers, right? They are, as far as I'm concerned, they take their knowledge, what they've learned, and they use it. But there's nothing, they can't tell you anything to any degree of certainty. Okay.
And I have a personal experience I'd like to share, but I think we should probably get a break and then talk to our friends out there.
Detroit Black and White. We're gonna come when we come back. We're gonna go to Jim, Lady T. Good morning. We love you. We're gonna go to break, and then we're gonna come back to Detroit and Black and White. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Eric Sabri, your Wayne County Treasurer. Are you living in the home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, or maybe you know someone who's in the same situation? The probate process may be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. We have several nonprofit partners who have free attorneys who can assist you. Contact our office, 313-224-5990, or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. Don't lose your family property. Some of these properties have been in the family for 4 or 5 generations. Contact us now. We're here to help.
We're back at Detroit in black and white. Jim wanted to share something. I want to share a couple of statistics with our guests. But go ahead, Jim.
Well, I was going to go to our. Why don't you go ahead first? Because I want to read some of our comments.
Okay, great. So I did a little search here. It says that 10 to 20% of surgeries might be unnecessary. Hysterectomies show around 18 to 20% are potentially unneeded, with some research indicating over 30% of younger women having hysterectomies for benign conditions had unnecessary procedures, highlighting women's specific vulnerability in areas like gynecology. That is effed up.
Well, it's the same thing with back surgeries and stuff like that. I think there's a maybe not as large a percentage, but they say quite a few are unnecessary procedures. And doctors, the problem with surgeons is surgeons are always like, yeah, let's operate. And I think you really have to look at alternatives. Sometimes, I had twice on different legs to my torn quadricep tendon. And I wasn't going to be able to walk properly without that surgery. I mean, there was no options there. But sometimes if it's just a tear and not a complete tear, physical therapy works out. And I was going to say, the one thing about Medicare fraud is that with that Dr. Fareed Fatah, who did all the oncology unnecessary things, they didn't bust him on doing the unnecessary things. What they did bust him on is $34 million in Medicare fraud, money laundering, and some other things, which is just an easier thing to prove. It's sometimes harder to prove medical malpractice, but it's always easier in black and white to do Medicare fraud. So
yeah, I do want to say something before you say it. So Per Orks, he says OJ Estate ended up paying out Fred Goldman nearly $58 million. That was, yes, that is true, but that was after a whole lot of wrangling, because he went to Florida, he tried to they spent forever trying to get that doggone money. And the point that I was trying to make is that they are allowed to use, everyone's allowed to use these legal channels, and they're there for us to be able to use. So that is what I want to say. Go ahead, Jim, if you want to.
I'm glad Par said that. That's an agreement, I believe, Par. You can help me if I'm wrong. I may be wrong. If I read your statement, you're talking about the estate. That's after the death of O.J. Simpson. Mm-hmm. That's not during the life of O.J. Simpson. So he didn't pay the price. His estate is paying the price now because he fought it for that time. I'm not making a comment about that. I'm just reading your statement. The O.J. estate ended up paying.
And I believe there was correcting it, because you're right. He did say estate, which means that was after his death. But during his lifetime, he was like, I ain't paying you shit. And and I usually don't use profanity, but that was his attitude. You ain't getting shit. And I think I read some months ago that his children want to get this thing over with, and they decided to go ahead and pay.
Do the right thing.
Yeah, pay him that money. Okay. You want to go and read some of the viewers?
Yes. Tamari, it's called Eugenics. Tamari Kema, thank you for joining us. Always good to see you. Hazel Park Taekwondo, good morning to you. A shared story. Should always get a second or third opinion. And a lot of that is dependent on your medical system, right? If they get you in network, you're probably just going to get a second and a third opinion that agree with the first opinion, especially if it's a network. It's the whole, and Allan can talk a little bit about that if he wants to, but it's probably the radiation that kills people, not the cancer, Mr. 1213. Tamara had three sections because once you had the first one, by most likely you have to have all deliveries by C-section, which limits the number of births a mother can have. And then the question is, so now it's necessary to have 3 C-sections. Maybe you didn't need the first one. And I think that's the point, right? So now you're tripling the medical care. There are already fraud investigators, Eric Brown, there are already fraud investigators, but the fraud is so pervasive that the government can't keep up with the violators. It goes well beyond a doctor's office, and in EEs are just as insurance company.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what it says. My eyes are failing me today.
I think he said the insurance companies and employees are just as complicit, is what
Got
he
it. The Tuskegee experiment is another medical malpractice. We talk about Tuskegee, talk about the Native Americans. There's plenty of examples, but that's a great one. Tracy Smith, 9208. Thank you. Janet Select, good morning to you already. Surgery candidates present an opportunity to teach in real life training. Karen C. Winston, Duela, medical oversight has always been lacking and still is because money rules and life doesn't matter. Interesting, Duela. I want to talk about that. A shared story.
You know what? I'm going to ask Duela to go ahead and hit that link, because Duela is a professional. She's in the medical field. She's a nurse. And actually, she was in management. So, Duela, if you could weigh in, if you could just take your phone, do this. We don't have to look at you. You could just press audio. We want you to join us. But go ahead, Jim.
Everyone that was part of that should have been prosecuted too. None of them have a soul. A shared story. I bet the 500 women were black or non-white. To marry. Namra 7S75. Good to see you. Good grand rising Detroit in black and white. Host and viewers. Bless the new year. Bless you too. Thanks for joining us. Practitioners of Medicare. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, Kenneth, our longtime friend. Timothy Square Bay, good morning, Happy New Year. Deborah Harris, hey, Deborah, good morning, Happy New Year to you. That's why people stay away from doctors when they can. That's a good point, Mr. 1213. Tracy Smith, women have been victims of medical malpractice since Henrietta Lacks or before. Is it Lacks? Yes. I don't trust that it was all about revenue. To marry. I think that it was probably to stop and limit black births. That's interesting and a sad take, to marry, but thank you for your comments. C-sections is a money dance. Miss Sheila. Okay, I think I got just about everybody. Kidnapping heads of state is misusing power, Mr. 1213. The local judicial system allowing relationships and money dance have more influence than the law. Kenneth, thank you for sharing. No ICE facility in Highland Park, Kenneth. We the people are more powerful than we think. I think that's a great point, Miss Sheila. It's just we need to stand up. We need to rise up. What happened to Drill Baby Drill? Barbara Ingalls. That's an unfamiliar name. Shameful. Nice to see you, Barbara. I bet he wears a military uniform at the press conference at 11. I agree with Allan. Shameful, Janet. So we got to get that Allan agreement there. Thank you. And Mr. 1213 also agrees with Allan. You can't forget that when they agree with you, Allan. We want to talk about it. We believe it's a money dance.
History when they agree with you.
Okay, Duela Boyce she's been added to the stage.
That's awesome.
What's going on?
Let's go to Duela, and I'll share my story after Duela.
Yeah,
and I have a story after you, Jim. So.
Okay, go ahead, D.
Hey.
And I have a story after you, Jim. So.
You're gonna have to turn your television down because we get the feedback.
Some kind of feedback happening here.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Now, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, Vanessa. I'm doing this for you. I'm
Good morning.
Good morning, all.
Good morning.
Okay.
Good morning. So what's up?
We need you to weigh in on this conversation about women, about this doctor, about the medical profession, that kind of thing, and give us your perspective.
Well, it's always very unfortunate that we have these type of situations. Even being in the medical field, I don't have a lot of confidence in how things are run today. I don't like healthcare the way it's standing now. There are a lot of things that could be done to change things, but it's all up to the upper management. And upper management sometimes seems to take a back seat to these things, and only the lower level employees will even be charged with any from doing any kind of things that are wrong in healthcare. But we do have all of these doctors, just like I had a procedure myself. They are all about money. It's not about whether you're going to get healthy again. It's all about the treatment and how much money can be made for the hospitals.
So, Dwayla, I have a question to ask you. In your employment and in your what you did in management, isn't it true? Like, I'm using this doctor as an example. In order for him to perform those procedures, doesn't that have to go up through the chain of command?
No, most of the times they allow because it's like a money grab. They allow the doctors to do these procedures because they realize that they're going to bring revenue in for the hospitals.
So if a doctor says, "Hey, I'm doing this surgery," he doesn't have to get okay from anybody or anything like that. He just does the surgery.
Right. He could just do the surgery.
Wow. Okay. Oh, wow. You guys have any questions for Dwayla?
Dwayla, how long have you been in the healthcare industry?
Well, I am actually retired now. I had 35 years.
Wow. And when did you
and I retired in 20. And actually that I retired right after COVID, because the situations got so demanding and overwhelming that it was time for me to pass the baton.
And were you working in a hospital setting?
Yes.
Can you say which one, or is
yes, I retired from Henry Ford Healthcare System.
On the Boulevard, or
no? Well, I was over 5 different clinics.
Okay.
So it wasn't at the actual hospital. It was in like we had one in Sterling Heights, Grosse Pointe, West Bloomfield, and I managed those. So.
Oh wow! And were they just like walk-in type?
Yes, yes. I worked for the walk-in clinic.
Okay. And did you see the budgets, or what did you, over the years, you must have seen a lot of change?
Yeah, that was part of, we did more sitting in meetings, hearing about all of this. And and from my experience, it was always just about money. There was no concern for, even though it would appear that they were concerned for patient safety because we always had to go through these drills and routines, but the bottom line was still always the money that the hospital needed to continue to provide services.
Yes.
Wow.
And I want Dwayla to stay because I want to share my experience. I want to get her thoughts on it if she would do that.
Okay, I'll stay.
So it's time goes by, right? It's probably 10 years ago. I woke up, I was sick all night. And I woke up in the middle of the night and said, I have to go to the hospital. So I go to the hospital. It's in the wee hours, whatever, 2, 3 in the morning. And the hospital calls. I had surgery a couple years earlier, really minor surgery. And I needed surgery, right? It was a gallbladder, which nobody thinks about their gallbladder until they're laying in a hospital. Well, they put me in like a wing that was not, they didn't admit me. It was like exploratory, whatever the case is, because what insurance. However, they put me in a wing that was kind of pending, right? So anyway, they call the surgeon. He comes into my room, this surgeon, and it's 3, 4 in the morning. He's like, I'm going to operate on you in the morning. I did you before. I know you, et cetera, et cetera. So comes 8:30, 9 o'clock, probably one of the top surgeons at the hospital comes into my room, who I was familiar with. He owns some buildings around town, et cetera. I don't want to get into all the specifics, but he said, Jim, you want somebody else doing your surgery. You don't want this doctor. You want this doctor. Wow. So anyway, make a long story short, I had to, they're giving me morphine every 30 minutes. And at 20 minutes, I'm trying to push the button because I hurt so much. All right. So I asked, he says, you have to ask for it. I can't do this. You have to ask for it. So I asked for another surgeon, and I'm still here. So it was a good sign. But anyway, the story comes out a few years later that this particular physician was directing people to other surgeons because of the financials. So the surgeon that was originally going to do it was known not as a great surgeon, but the money went somewhere else. So the money was directed towards a certain group of surgeons. When you talk about being in a position where you're helpless, I've had that experience, so I know what it's like begging for morphine, and then saying, "Well, you need to go this direction or that direction." So you're suggesting probably that the reason he directed me, and it came out later, was because he was somehow aligned with these surgeons who were going to do the surgery. Is that correct?
And this is all typical. It's not anything that's unusual. It's just because most of the public, you're not involved in that part of the process. But there are meetings all the time where management sit in, and the primary focus is to bring revenue into the hospitals regardless. So it's sad that it's like that, but just like now, I actually pray that I do not get sick, because I do not want to go to the hospitals. The hiring practices, the people that work there, and it's not all of them. I'm not saying all of them, but from my experience over the years to what I see now, it's very, very scary.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you know what, Dwayla, I'm going to thank you, because I was not aware that the doctors, just like lawyers, we make our own decisions, because we make our decisions about the cases, and this is how we're going to do that. But I thought because it's a hospital, they had to go over the. So this guy was able to make these decisions. We're gonna perform this surgery over 500 times on these women with no. And management didn't give a damn about it, because guess, it's more money. That is horrible. It is very scary. And that is the reason why people like yourself, myself, and other people do not trust the medical profession or doctors. I'm going to give you guys one more story, and then you could go ahead, Allan. A friend of mine the other day, I encouraged her to go because she was complaining about some chest pains. And I said, it may not be gas. This happened to my mother years ago. She ended up in ICU because, as a woman, they told her it was gas, when in fact she was having a heart attack, and she ended up in ICU for over a month. She went to ER. She sat in ER over 4 hours. She was not singing or anything. She left ER, called me. We're talking on the phone. I said, at least go to urgent care. She went to urgent care. The doctor at urgent care told her she had this flu virus that's going around. He gave her a prescription. As she's standing in line, he calls her and says, "Oh, no, you need to go to ER. Go to this hospital. Don't go to the one you were at before. Go to this other hospital." She goes to the other hospital. Guess what? Her lung had collapsed. So she's sitting in one hospital, wasn't attended to. She goes to another hospital. They tell her the flu. And then, oh, by the way, she doesn't even have the flu. And so she was getting medication for something that she doesn't even have. Wow. Ridiculous. And then on top of everything else, they told her that they wanted to perform surgery, and she told them absolutely not. Go ahead, Allan.
We did at Deadline Detroit a little while, I can't remember, maybe 3-4 years ago. One of our writers did probably 50 columns on Beaumont, where John Fox, who was the CEO at the time, was doing everything to make profits. And one of the things they were doing, which we exposed, and they changed their practice afterwards, was that doctors were being pressured to use replacements for knee replacements, shoulder replacements, a product made by Stryker out of Kalamazoo. A lot of doctors didn't like using that product, wanted to use other products because they thought it was better. But because Beaumont got a kickback from Stryker if they used the product in 75% of the surgeries, doctors had to get permission to use another product. And they were told, don't write me. They had to write to one of the head surgeons and he said, don't write me, call me, because they didn't want a paper trail.
Right.
And then finally, when they came out, they did change their practice. But there's a case where, doctors said, these are better products. And we know, I have one of my college roommates who had, and I don't know if it was because of the product or whatever, but he had an infection after a knee replacement, initially through DMC out in like Commerce or something. It got infected. They waited 8 months and they were going to do it again, and it got reinfected, and he had to have his leg amputated. And so there are consequences to the finances where they're pushing for that. And the other thing was, during, Beaumont is a nonprofit. During the beginning of the pandemic, they had a surplus of $2.5 billion, which is what you have, for rainy days. Well, during the pandemic, they needed, to dip into that. Instead of dipping into that, they ended up with $3.5 billion from getting money from the government while they were laying off nurses. And so, there's where the healthcare is all based on finances.
It really is. We're going to take a break, and we're going to come back. Detroit in Black and White. We're going to give a shout out to some of our guests, and then I'm going to tell you guys about my other outrage. Detroit in Black and White.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you, Dwayla.
Thanks
Great
so
to
much.
have you.
Thank you.
Next time you'll see me in person when it's in the evening.
Yeah, I'm with you, Dwayla. I'm with you. And maybe we can get a whole hour with Dwayla. We have
Right.
we have
Anybody else that want to come on in, you can come on in. Just like
And
you
right
guys
quick,
calling
it
in
was
on the radio.
very, very easy. I thought that I would have a problem, but you go in, all the directions are right there, and see, I didn't even have to show my face. So it's better when I didn't have to show my face this morning. You all have a great day. Bye-bye.
You do the same. Bye.
Hi, I'm Eric Sabria, your Wayne County Treasurer. If you're living in a home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, the probate process can be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. Contact us at 313-224-5990 or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
We're back, Detroit Black and White, our Saturday morning's edition. I'm going to give a shout out to Tamara Kimmett. She says Margaret Sanger, American birth control activist, founded Planned Parenthood for birth control. Janice Saluk, good morning. She said the Justice Department today announced the results of its 2025 National Healthcare Fraud Takedown, which resulted in criminal charges against 324 defendants, including 96 doctors. Stephanie Jackson's, good morning, Steph.
Where's she been?
You know what, Steph, listen, we're talking about doctors.
We miss her when she's not with us.
She had a dental appointment the other day.
I got her. Okay, we'll let her slide.
I hope it was necessary surgery. I hope it wasn't a money grab. And she and I have talked about this on many occasions. 677 Bird, everything is data entry into a computer. Tamiri says, remember the syphilis experiment? Hazel Park, good morning. Lord knows this is very sad. I'm just thankful that I was able to make it out with malpractice with my brain surgery, epilepsy in 1996, thoracic heart transplant 2023, all at Henry Ford Hospital.
And that's great. That's great. We're glad he's with us. Yeah. Or I shouldn't say he, Hazel Park Taekwondo.
Right.
We don't know.
Timothy Squire Bay says that he had fractured his ankle a few months ago. And he says primary care doctor is a DMC doctor, and he wanted him to have surgery. He went to Henry Ford doctor, and he told him he didn't have to have surgery. It will heal on its own. See what I'm talking about? Mr. 1213 says a few years ago, he was hospitalized with double pneumonia, stayed for 6 days, and his insurance covered everything. However, the hospital charged him $500 because he only stayed 6 days and not more. Janice Saluk says civil charges against 20 defendants for $14.2 million in alleged fraud, as well as civil settlements with 106 defendants totaling $34.3 million, were also announced as part of the takedown last June's. Par Org says, Vanessa, this is a lot to unpack regarding this subject, and Allan's friends over at Beaumont Corwell Health Royal Oak Campus is not off the hook about what you're discussing. Great. Allan, was what Tamara says. Deborah Harris says, well, Jim, you were blessed to know a doctor to tell you to change the surgeon. What about a person who doesn't know the doctor that advised you to change your doctor? He saved your life. Cynthia says, great
Thank you,
job.
Deborah. Yes.
Great job, D. Duela says, thanks, Cynthia. They know each other. Eric says, it's a racket. Even in the HR field, we have filed complaints with the state when we see the same doctor's office signature on FMLA paperwork. And Mike Bunch says, here late again, but glad to be here. We're happy to have you. So we're going to change, because I said I had two. I haven't done outrages in a long time. So this one is a local outrage. So the other day before, was it yesterday? I sent you guys the story about a judge in Wayne County. Very nice judge. It is no shade on her, but I thought it was very interesting that she recused herself from contentious Detroit foreclosure. Okay, so the point that I'm trying to make is you have these foreclosures and it impacts Detroit. It's in Wayne County, but more Detroiters than out county, outside of Detroit, where these homes have been foreclosed on for property taxes. They sell the home right at the foreclosure sale. They make this money. Okay, there's a profit, right? And so the court has said, listen, you guys can't keep this profit. The money belongs to the homeowners, right? Their property has been sold. You've made a profit. What they've done is, okay, that's what the law says, where you're going to have to file a claim and you have a deadline to file the claim in order to get your money. I think that is that is some BS. Listen, Wayne County, you have the Wayne County exec talking about all this excess money, this surplus. Well, was it on the backs of people who've lost their home? There is no way in hell a person who has paid for their house is paid for. You're going to lose your house for a couple of $1,000s to property taxes. They turn around and get the doggone property, get a profit, and you mean to tell me I got to fill out some paperwork by a certain deadline to get my money? And oh, by the way, a lot of people don't even know about it because guess what? They didn't really put it out there for people to know. This judge that recused herself, guess what? She's one of the very same people that was entitled to $26,000. That's a hell of a lot of money. Now, you're talking about being outraged. You should be outraged. Did they follow the law? Are they following the law? Yes. But here you go, putting some red tape, okay? You're preventing people from getting what is due to them. And it's pissed me off because you're talking about people who are unhoused, people who've lost housing. You're talking about Detroit where the poverty rate is over 50%. And this is what we're doing. This is what we're doing. Y'all need to talk to every last one of these politicians about this nonsense. What do you have to say about this, Jim? And yeah, I'm doing my hand like this because I'm very passionate about this. What do you have to say?
Well, I think you're right. I think government takes advantage of people sometimes, and we need to put an end to it, right? They're talking about the champ, Thomas Hearns, dealing with losing his house because somehow a second mortgage was taken out of and the house was paid off, 20, 25 years ago. And now somebody came in and took his house because of a second mortgage. We don't know the details, but there has to be a vehicle in place to prevent this kind of action. And there isn't.
It isn't. And this is the thing. So they take these people, took them to court, and they know the loss. The court has said, listen, this profit belongs to them. This profit belongs to the homeowners. Okay. You're right. But guess what? We're going to fix this. They have to fill out a claim. They have to do it by a certain deadline in order to get their money. Listen, y'all know who house you've taken. You know who house you foreclosed. Why do I have to fill out a claim about my ish? That's ridiculous. Yeah. Allan, what do you have to say?
No, I agree. I agree with both what you and him are saying. No, absolutely.
So what do you think that the people can do? Because
There has to be a step. There has to be an organization that gets somewhere in the middle that can prevent this from happening, right? It's not even about the claim. It's about taking away someone's house they may have had for 50 or 60 years. They may have worked at Ford Motor Company and made $5 an hour in 1953, right? And now the government's going to take their house. That just doesn't make sense. And then they're going to give them a little money back. Well, this is ridiculous.
Right. I mean, the government is supposed to serve the people, and you're supposed to provide protection for the people, not screw the people. That's, I think government loses sight of what its mission is when these kinds of things happen. So,
well, you know what the ha for me was, this very same judge was sitting over cases like this, right? And they don't know whether she realized that she was owed money or didn't, whether she realized it or not, but she had to recuse herself from that. So you're talking, that says to me, she probably didn't even have real notice, didn't know anything about it. And we see people in the comments saying Eric Sabri could help. Well, I also think that the Wayne County executive can help. That would be Warren Evans. I think in Oakland County, the Oakland County exec can help. There is no way you can have this money. And listen, you have all these executives talking about these surpluses. Are the surpluses from the sale of these homes?
But we have groups out there. Tamara is a member of the Coalition for Property Tax Justice, who made it our mission to tell the foreclosed victims about the money before the deadline. Eric Sabri put the deadline on it. We help people. If I could just stop for just 1 second and talk about our guests, the people that are on this show every day. Absolutely. I'm humbled by their talent. When you have Dwayla and we have Tracy, when you have Tamari, there's so many people out there. And by the way, I apologize, Hazel Park Taekwondo. I let my bias tell me that because you had heart disease that you were probably a man. And I don't know if you're a man or a woman, and it's irrelevant, but I apologize for that. We have talented people out here that contribute to this show every single time we're on. And I'm grateful for that. I'll leave
it. If we could back up just a drop, I just wanted to finish up the conversation about all the medical stuff. The Tuskegee experiment was done with the federal government, with 400 Black men and it was done through Tuskegee University, which at the time was Tuskegee Institute. And it ran from 1932 to 1972. And basically what it was is 400 Black men, mostly impoverished Black men who had syphilis, were not treated for the syphilis. And the experiment was to see the impact of syphilis over a long term, how it impacted the person, knowing that they should have been treating these people, but instead they let the syphilis run out until, probably till death or whatever. And just to go back a little further, in Auschwitz in the 40s, at the concentration camp, there was a Dr. Mengele who was doing a lot of experiments. So my aunt was in Auschwitz, as was my mother. She saw Dr. Mengele at the camp, and he was doing a lot of experiments on twins. He was fascinated with twins. He was trying to do all these crazy things. He did amputations. He injected them with like viruses like typhus and stuff like that. And you just see the cruelty of humanity. And particularly here in this country, we expect more. But when we see like the Tuskegee experiments and stuff like that, it's just so outrageous that you take human beings. And really, I mean, there's people who argue even further that we shouldn't be doing some of these experiments on animals. But, when you're treating people as not human, and it's really outrageous.
So I'm going to share a personal story. I didn't know her, but my father's mother. So you talk about the Tuskegee Institute and infecting people with syphilis. She died in her 30s of syphilis. They didn't trust the medical profession. So what they did, from what I understand, is use roots and all these other things, thinking that they're going to cure the syphilis disease. And this poor lady, this was my grandmother. She died of syphilis because They did not trust the medical profession because of what you were just talking about, Allan, the Tuskegee experiment. So, this goes back a long way for a lot of people, in particularly African Americans, who do not trust the medical um, profession.
Right.
And it is really, really, really sad that people feel that way. And so you can imagine, as a little girl hearing this story, as a little girl, I'm thinking, as I got older, I know you should go to the doctor, but people just don't trust it. And you see a lot of people now doing herbs and taking the natural path to things. And it's really unfortunate because we have a lot of medical professionals, people who watch Detroit in black and white, that are on the up and up, that do what they're supposed to do, and that are very passionate about making a better quality of life for people as far as their medical concerns are.
I think it's really important now that we have the access to the internet is to do research. When your doctor says we should do this or that, you should do research on whatever procedure they're recommending. My cousin was a gastro doctor over at Ford for a long time, and then she went into private practice. But she had said when the internet came, there were patients asking a lot more questions, and people should always question it and do research. If your doctor says you need this procedure, you should be taking this medication, look at, there have been a lot of people taking Cipro, which is an antibiotic, a very strong one. And there've been there's a whole group of people who have had these long-term side effects from taking Cipro. So whenever you're given prescriptions or given procedures, you should do some research on the internet about it.
Hey, Deborah, thank you. Oh, my Lord, trust God and obey for his protection in our lives. Thank you for your comment this morning, first of the year. We appreciate that.
And somebody mentioned AI. It's hard to tell what's real or not. You do have to do a lot of research, and some of the stuff on AI, some of it's brilliant and some of it's not correct, and you have to do additional research.
And Tamari talks about the spread of syphilis and the U.S. government's role. And, we talk about what happened to the Native Americans and the medical experiments out there. And I call it the plains, the Midwest, not the Midwest, it was the plains, some of the things they did out there. One of the things, Allan, I guess the point is find yourself a doctor that you trust if you can, and try and work through him. The first thing that doctors usually tell me is get off the internet, because, the information is not always accurate, right? You look at, you have a sore throat and all of a sudden you think you have, Allan, has a throat issue, but has suffered with a throat issue. But, a lot of those esophageal cancer is deadly, right? And there are things, but because you have a sore throat doesn't mean you have esophageal cancer. Because you have a stomach ache doesn't mean that, you have stomach cancer. So,
but I want to say that, a lot of doctors, and only recently in medical schools have they started teaching the benefits of eating the right foods and, and the impacts of foods as a medicinal solution or whatever. But a lot of the doctors are very, very narrow. They just go by what they learned 20 years ago in med school or whatever. They don't keep up on the latest changes. And, eating and, what you eat is can be very important in terms of your health and stuff like that. And a lot of doctors just totally ignore that. They don't ask you like, well, what's going on? What are you eating? And I think they're being remiss in not doing that. So.
Well,
and Jan Selleck says it's good to investigate, and I agree, Jan. I'm all over the internet. If I've got a hangnail, I'm trying to figure out why I have a hangnail, right?
But it's twofold. You investigate, but you don't know whether or not you can trust the stuff that you see online.
That's true.
And the other thing is, when you talk about eating healthy, it's so expensive to eat healthy. It's ridiculous. Okay, it's easier to eat. It's cheaper. right, to eat processed food as opposed to organic food, things that we grew up on, and I'm of that generation. Now it costs you a fortune to eat organic food. It's just ridiculous. But I do think I agree with you, Allan, that you do have to watch your diet, because that plays a big role in how you take care of yourself.
I
So
mean, so much diabetes, heart attacks, strokes can all be, you see people who have really had lousy diets. And I agree with you. It's become more and more expensive, but in the long run, it's more expensive when you have all the medical stuff. A friend of mine he's married to a woman who's not from this country. And she says, I don't get it. I watch all these commercials on Wendy's, the Baconator, and all this. And then I just see a lot of drug commercials.
Yeah, that's true.
All these things. And, there's some correlation there. I mean, between what we see on TV, the Baconator and the triple, this and that.
You're making me hungry.
Yeah, I get hungry watching that, but I'm like, oh my God, that's heart attack food.
And then they have, like you said, then they have all the pharmaceutical companies. You go from the Baconator to Trilogy or whatever it is.
Right.
So we're about to wrap up. Mr. 1213 said, grow your own food. I think that's a good idea. But did you know that people that are in the seed business, if you decide that you want to plant like watermelons, the watermelons have no seed. You know why? They want you to come back and buy seeds every year, as opposed to the watermelons that had the seeds in it, things like that. We have to think about those kind of things. We also had a comment by one of our people who said, listen, she didn't say listen, but I'm saying it, listen. She says, it is expensive to eat healthier, but it's even more expensive to get sick. And on that note, we're going to say goodbye. You guys have a wonderful rest of the Saturday, wonderful Sunday. Come back again on Monday evening and watch Eric Brown's Detroit in Black and White presents Reality Strikes. And we will see you on Wednesday evening at 8:30 p.m. Love you guys. Bye.
Thank you, Tara. You're right.